All right, so have you ever felt like you're kind of playing vocabulary whack-a-mole with English? You know, you've got the words, you've got the grammar, but then suddenly, like, bam, a native speaker starts talking, you're just totally lost.
Yeah.
I feel like we've all been there.
It is kind of funny, isn't it? We always think it's about not knowing enough words,
Yeah,
but uh, the real key is actually like how we approach listening itself.
totally. And that's what we're diving deep into today.
Yeah.
We're looking at this video called Master English Listening Fast. It is packed with tips,
It is.
and we're here to kind of help you sift through them and find what really clicks.
Exactly, because anyone can give you a list of tips, right?
Right.
But like we're going to explore why these strategies actually work so you can really make them your own.
I love that. Okay, so one thing that really stood out to me in this video was this idea of predictive listening.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like using context clues to kind of anticipate what the speaker's going to say next.
That's a great way to put it. Like, think about it. When you're in a conversation, you're not just hearing words in a vacuum. You're
Right.
picking up on these subtle cues, the speaker's tone, their body language, even their cultural background.
It's like being a detective.
It is.
You're piecing together the bigger picture.
Exactly.
And I can see how that would make listening so much less overwhelming. The video actually breaks down some techniques for doing this,
Yeah.
like zeroing in on keywords that signal what's important.
Keywords are like signposts in a conversation. They
Yeah.
tell you, hey, pay attention. This is the core idea.
I like that. And then there's body language.
Oh, yeah.
I never realized how much we communicate without even saying a word.
Right. A raised eyebrow, a slight nod.
Yeah.
The direction that someone's looking, it can completely change the meaning of what's being said.
Oh, it's so true. It's funny you mentioned that because this reminds me of a time I was at a conference and the speaker was using all this like technical jargon.
Yeah.
I thought I was following along, but then he made this little joke and everyone else laughed.
Oh.
And I was totally lost. I had completely missed the overall context.
It's so easy to do, especially when you're concentrating on understanding another language.
Totally.
And that's actually a perfect lead-in to the next big idea from the video,
Okay.
active listening. So it's not just about hearing, it's about engaging with what's being said.
I'm curious, what are some of the active listening techniques that stood out to you from the video?
Well, one that I use all the time is paraphrasing. So repeating what you've heard in your own words.
Uh-huh.
It's a fantastic way to check your understanding, and it shows the speaker that you're really trying to follow along.
It's almost like you're saying, hang on, let me make sure I'm on the same page as you.
Exactly.
Plus, it forces you to process the information more deeply.
Yeah.
There was this one time I was working with a colleague on a project, and we were discussing deadlines. And I thought I understood what she meant, but I decided to paraphrase her instructions just to be sure. And wouldn't you know it, I had it totally wrong.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of how paraphrasing can prevent miscommunication and save a ton of hassle.
For sure. Another key technique the video highlights is asking clarifying questions.
Yes.
Like, don't be afraid to speak up if something isn't clear.
Absolutely.
It's so much better to ask than to just nod along and pretend you understand when you really don't.
Right.
And finally, the video talks about summarizing key points regularly. It's like creating these mental bookmarks as you go along.
Exactly. It helps you stay focused on the main ideas and prevents you from getting bogged down in the details.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you go from understanding these concepts to actually putting them into practice in your everyday life?
Well, that's where the video's suggestions on using media come in.
Okay, you mean things like watching movies and TV shows in English?
Exactly.
That always seems like such a fun way to learn,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never been sure how to make it like really effective. What did the video suggest?
Well, one suggestion was to pick content that you genuinely enjoy. Don't force yourself to watch something you find boring just because you think it's good for your English.
Right.
You're more likely to stick with it if you're actually interested in the subject matter.
That makes a lot of sense. I know I've picked up phrases and expressions from my favorite TV shows without even trying.
Me too. Speaking of trying, the video had this tip about repeating dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
So basically rewinding and trying to mimic the actor's pronunciation and intonation.
Yeah, it sounds a bit silly at first.
It does.
But I can see how that would help you get a feel for the rhythm and flow of like natural English speech.
For sure. I love that the video encourages people to try these things out. It's all about finding what works best for you.
I love that. Speaking of finding what works, let's move on to the last section of the video, which focuses on finding the right community and using tech to your advantage.
Yeah, so it's not just about solo study.
Right.
It's about getting out there and actually using your English with other people.
That can feel intimidating though, Ken.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the video makes a great point. Being able to understand English passively is one thing,
Yeah.
but being able to confidently participate in conversations,
Right.
that's a whole different ballgame. And you can't get there without practice.
Oh, that's so true. I know that from personal experience. For a while, I was using a language learning app,
Uh,
and while it wasn't exactly like a conversation group,
right?
it did connect me with other learners from all over the world.
That's a great point. Even online interactions can help you get more comfortable with using English in a less structured setting.
And those interactions often lead to discovering new learning resources, too.
Oh, totally.
I remember someone in my language app group recommended this awesome podcast about...
Which is a perfect example of the kind of tech resources the video was highlighting.
Exactly.
Podcast listening apps,
Yeah.
even interactive language learning apps like Duolingo or Babbel. There's a whole world of options out there.
Okay, I'm officially inspired. This video has me thinking about my approach to listening in a whole new way. What about you? What's been the biggest takeaway for you so far?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's the emphasis on active engagement.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to passively consume information these days.
Yeah.
But with language learning, you really get out what you put in.
Yeah.
Whether it's asking questions, paraphrasing, or even just being super aware of the speaker's tone, those little actions can make a world of difference.
Totally agree. It's like the difference between reading a recipe and actually cooking the dish.
Yeah.
You might understand the ingredients list, but you won't truly know the flavor until you get your hands dirty and experience it for yourself.
That's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
And that brings me to something I've been thinking about as we've been talking.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of great techniques from this video,
Yeah.
but they might not all be equally effective for everyone.
Oh, you're right. I'm already wondering which ones I want to try first and which ones might not be a good fit for my learning style. I'm excited to see where you go with this.
This leads to a really important question for our listener today. How can you take all this great advice and tailor it to your own specific learning style and goals?
Yeah, it's like we've got this awesome toolkit now,
Yeah.
but we need to figure out which tools are going to be the most effective for us.
Precisely. It's about becoming the architect of your own learning journey. So let's say you're someone who thrives on visual input,
Okay.
maybe focusing on body language cues and watching movies with subtitles is your secret weapon.
Oh, totally. Or maybe you're someone who's really drawn to the sounds of language. Then podcasts and listening apps might be your go-to.
Yeah, and if you're more of a social butterfly,
Yeah.
seeking out those conversation groups,
Right.
that could be like a game changer for you.
Totally. It's all about playing to your strengths and finding what resonates with you personally.
For sure. And I think that's something that often gets overlooked in language learning. It doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all approach.
No, it's like creating your own personalized listening workout. Choosing the activities that feel most engaging and effective for you.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And just like with any good workout, consistency is key. But the beauty of it is you get to choose activities you actually enjoy.
Right.
Learning shouldn't feel like a chore. It should be an exciting adventure.
I'm already feeling more motivated just thinking about it this way. This whole deep dive has really shifted my perspective on how I approach listening. It's not just about passively absorbing words.
Yeah.
It's about actively engaging with the language and the speaker.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a dance, you know?
It is.
You're listening, predicting, responding, and adapting in real time.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And when you embrace that active role, you're not just learning English. You're connecting with people and cultures on a whole new level.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so rewarding. It's not just about checking off a box on a language proficiency test. It's about opening up this whole world of possibilities for communication and understanding.
Yeah.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've unlocked a whole new level of listening.
Me too. It's a reminder that there's always more to learn. And even something as seemingly simple as listening can be a journey of constant discovery and growth.
Absolutely. So to our listener out there, I hope this deep dive has sparked some ideas and inspired you to try some of these techniques. Maybe you've already been doing some of them without even realizing it.
And if you haven't, don't worry. There's no right or wrong way to approach language learning. It's all about finding what works for you and making it a part of your daily routine.
Like maybe instead of scrolling through social media on your commute, you pop in your earbuds and listen to an English podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you challenge yourself to watch one episode of your favorite show with English subtitles tonight.
Yeah.
Small steps can lead to big progress over time.
Absolutely. And remember, language learning is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There will be ups and downs, moments of frustration, and moments of triumph.
For sure.
But the most important thing is to stay curious, keep practicing, and never stop exploring the incredible power of language.
Beautifully said. And who knows, maybe one day you'll find yourself effortlessly navigating conversations, understanding jokes, and even picking up on those subtle nuances that make English such a rich and fascinating language.
It's definitely possible, and we're here to support you every step of the way.
Yeah.
So keep listening, keep learning, and most importantly, keep having fun with it.
Okay, that's a wrap on this deep dive into mastering English listening. We'll catch you in the next episode for another fascinating exploration of knowledge and ideas. Until then, happy listening. It's funny, we talk about mastering English listening, but it's not really about, like, reaching some kind of finish line, is it?
No, not really.
It's more like we're constantly evolving right alongside the language itself.
That's a great point. Languages are these living, breathing things. They're always changing, always adapting.
Right.
That's what makes them so fascinating. And honestly, a little intimidating sometimes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I think this video has given us a really solid framework for navigating that complexity.
I agree. If we kind of connect this back to our listener, though, what's really powerful about these techniques
Okay.
is they can be applied to so many different areas of life, not just language learning.
Oh, I like where you're going with this. Tell me more.
Well, think about active listening.
Mm-hmm.
It's so essential for effective communication in any context. Whether you're in a business meeting, having a conversation with a friend, or even just trying to follow a complicated set of instructions. Being able to really focus on what someone is saying, to understand their perspective,
Yeah.
and to ask clarifying questions when needed.
Yeah.
Those are invaluable skills no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's something we can all continue to work on and improve. It's almost like a muscle we need to keep exercising.
Exactly.
Right.
And the more you practice active listening, the more you realize it's not just about the words themselves. It's about the underlying emotions, the unspoken messages, those subtle cues that reveal so much about what someone is really trying to communicate.
It's like learning to read between the lines, not just of a text, but of a person.
Precisely. And that ability to connect with others on a deeper level, to truly understand where they're coming from, that's what makes communication so powerful and rewarding.
So to our listener out there, as you continue on your English learning journey, remember that it's not just about mastering grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary lists. It's about embracing the richness and complexity of human communication, about connecting with others in a meaningful way, and about discovering new perspectives that can enrich your life in countless ways.
Beautifully said. Keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep listening. You never know what amazing insights and connections you might discover along the way.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive into mastering English listening. We hope you've enjoyed the journey with us. Until next time, happy listening.
Have you ever felt that thing? You're in an English conversation, and even though your grammar and vocab are pretty good, you still feel like you're missing something. Like everybody else is in on some inside joke that you weren't told about.
Like you're speaking the words, but not the music.
Exactly. It's so frustrating.
It is. And you know what? I think a lot of times it's that cultural context.
Oh, cultural context.
Which is something that a lot of textbooks and courses gloss over, but it's so important.
Okay, so cultural context is more than just, please and thank yous, right? We're talking about something deeper.
Yeah, it's about understanding kind of the unspoken rules.
Yeah.
The values, the assumptions that people have in a particular culture that shape how they communicate.
So give me an example.
Well, let's take humor.
Okay.
In some cultures, self-deprecating humor can be endearing, but in other cultures, it might be seen as a sign of weakness or insecurity.
So a joke that might get you a laugh in one country could fall completely flat in another.
Exactly. Or even worse, be perceived as offensive. Remember that time a comedian made a joke about another country's national tragedy?
Oh, yeah.
Huge uproar.
It's a minefield I want to avoid.
Yeah.
So humor is one thing. What are some other ways that cultural context kind of shows up in English conversations?
Politeness is another big one.
Okay.
Some cultures really value directness and honesty, while others prioritize saving face and avoiding confrontation.
So if someone from a more direct culture says that's a terrible idea, they might just be giving their honest opinion.
Yeah.
Not trying to be rude.
Exactly.
Right.
And somebody from a culture that emphasizes indirect communication might perceive that as incredibly harsh.
Oh, wow.
They might phrase their disagreement much more subtly, like focusing on the potential drawbacks rather than outright rejecting the idea.
It's like speaking two different dialects of politeness.
Yeah, it really is.
No wonder things get lost in translation.
Absolutely. And it's not just the words we use either. Nonverbal cues play a huge role too, like eye contact.
Oh, gosh, I've had so many awkward experiences with that.
Me too.
I like to make eye contact when I'm talking, but I've noticed that in some cultures, people tend to avert their gaze more.
Right. And there are reasons for those differences.
Oh, really?
Often those nonverbal cues are rooted in deeper cultural values and beliefs.
So if I want to really master English conversations, I can't just focus on the words.
Nope.
I need to understand the cultural context that gives them meaning.
Exactly. It's like you're learning the grammar of a culture, not just the grammar of a language.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But how do we even begin to unpack all of this?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. We need to start by recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to cultural understanding.
Right.
Just like there are tons of dialects of English, there are tons of ways of expressing culture through communication.
So it's not about memorizing a set of rules, it's about developing a sense of awareness.
Exactly. It's about becoming a more observant and empathetic communicator, able to pick up on those subtle cues and kind of adapt your style accordingly.
Okay, I'm ready to become a cultural detective. What are some tools and strategies we can use to start cracking this code?
Well, one of the most effective ways to develop that awareness is through immersion.
Okay.
And I don't just mean like going to an English-speaking country.
No.
You can immerse yourself in different cultures right from your own home
Really? How so?
by seeking out content that's created by people from diverse backgrounds.
Okay.
So watch movies and TV shows from different countries. Yeah. Listen to podcasts hosted by people with different accents and perspectives. Read books by authors from various cultures.
That's like taking a virtual trip around the world without even leaving my couch.
Exactly. Right. And the more we expose ourselves to all these different ways of communicating,
Yeah.
the more attuned we'll become to those little subtle cultural nuances.
I like that. And it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I can see how that would work. But it's not just passive consumption, right?
No.
We need to actively engage with this material.
Exactly right. Ask yourself questions. Why did that character react that way? What are the cultural values that might be influencing their behavior? What's the subtext behind the words?
So we're turning our entertainment into a cultural learning experience.
Exactly.
I like that.
And another really powerful tool is to engage in what we call cultural shadowing.
Cultural shadowing. Sounds intriguing. What's that all about?
It's about observing native English speakers in their natural environment.
Okay.
So paying close attention to their body language, their tone of voice, their facial expressions, their overall communication style.
And where would I do that?
Oh, you can do that anywhere, really. People watch at a cafe, attend social gatherings, watch videos of people interacting in different contexts.
Right.
Just become a keen observer of human behavior.
So basically, I'm taking notes on the unspoken rules of communication.
Exactly.
I could even do that by watching some of my favorite YouTubers or streamers.
Absolutely.
Really pay attention to how they interact with their audience.
Yep. The more you observe, the more you'll start to pick up on those little cues that reveal a culture's communication style.
This is fascinating, but I have to admit, I'm also a little overwhelmed.
Understandable.
There's so much to learn.
There is. But remember, cultural understanding is a lifelong journey. It's not about reaching some destination. It's about embracing the process of discovery.
So it's about enjoying the ride,
Exactly.
celebrating those aha moments along the way.
Precisely. And I promise you those aha moments will come. They might come from a funny misunderstanding, a surprising cultural insight, or even just a heartfelt connection with somebody from a different background.
Okay, I'm feeling more motivated. But before we move on, I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly.
Yeah.
To truly master English conversations, we need to go beyond grammar and vocabulary.
Yes.
And we need to delve into the fascinating world of cultural context.
That's exactly right.
Become these cultural detectives, observing, analyzing these subtle cues that reveal the unspoken rules of communication. And we can do that through immersion in this diverse content and by practicing this cultural shadowing.
Yes, you got it.
This is so exciting.
It is.
I'm starting to see how understanding cultural context can transform not only how we speak English, but how we connect with people.
Absolutely.
On a deeper level.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Building bridges of understanding across cultures. And I think we're just getting started on this journey.
I can't wait to see what other insights we uncover in part 2 of this deep dive.
Me too.
We've been talking about how cultural context shapes English conversations.
Yeah.
It's not just about the words, but the why behind them.
Yeah, it's like the difference between reading sheet music and truly feeling the emotion of a song. You need both to really appreciate it.
So we need to become more like cultural
I
musicians,
like that.
attuned to the nuances and rhythms of different communication styles.
And just like learning a new instrument, it takes time and practice and a willingness to make mistakes.
Speaking of mistakes, I'm curious, what are some common pitfalls that English learners fall into when navigating these cultural differences?
Well, one common mistake is assuming that everyone communicates the same way you do.
Oh, yeah.
And this can lead to misunderstandings and even offense, especially when dealing with sensitive topics like religion or politics.
So even if our intentions are good, we could accidentally step on some cultural toes if we're not careful.
Exactly. Another pitfall is overthinking it.
Yeah.
Sometimes language learners get so caught up in trying to be culturally sensitive that they end up paralyzed by fear, unable to speak naturally.
Oh, I've been there. It's like you're walking on eggshells, worried about saying the wrong thing.
I understand.
Mm.
But remember, fluency is not about perfection. It's about communication. And even native English speakers make mistakes.
So it's better to try and stumble than to stay silent out of fear.
Absolutely. Mistakes are part of the learning process. In fact, they can be valuable opportunities for growth. If you say something that's not quite right and somebody politely corrects you, that's a chance to learn and improve.
So embracing those awkward moments as learning experiences is key.
Exactly. And remember, most people are understanding and appreciate the effort that you're making to learn their language and culture.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
But let's say we're in a conversation and we realize we've made a cultural faux pas. What's the best way to recover?
First, don't panic. It happens to the best of us. The most important thing is to be sincere and apologetic. Acknowledge that you made a mistake and express your willingness to learn from it.
So something like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to offend. Could you explain what I did wrong?
Exactly. Most people will appreciate your humility and be happy to clarify.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we go beyond just avoiding mistakes and actually start mastering these cultural nuances? Are there any specific techniques we can use?
Absolutely. One technique I find helpful is to focus on what we call cultural frameworks.
Cultural frameworks, what are those?
They're basically mental models that help us understand the underlying values and beliefs that shape a particular culture. For example, one common cultural framework is individualism versus collectivism.
Okay.
Individualistic cultures like the US tend to emphasize personal achievement and self-reliance, while collectivistic cultures like many Asian cultures prioritize group harmony and interdependence.
So understanding that framework can help explain why someone from an individualistic culture might be more comfortable speaking up in a meeting,
Right,
while someone from a collectivistic culture might prefer to listen and observe first.
exactly. Another useful framework is high context versus low context communication.
Oh,
So in high context cultures like Japan, a lot of meaning is conveyed through nonverbal cues, shared assumptions, and unspoken understandings. While in low context cultures like Germany, communication tends to be more direct and explicit.
so in a high context culture, what you don't say can be just as important as what you do say.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Understanding these frameworks can help you decode those unspoken messages and navigate social interactions more effectively.
This is giving me a whole new perspective on how to approach English conversations. It's like I'm suddenly aware of all these hidden layers of meaning.
And that's what makes it so fascinating. Of course, these frameworks are just starting points. Every culture is unique and complex, and there are always exceptions to the rule.
So it's about using these frameworks as a guide, not as a rigid set of rules.
Exactly. The real key is to stay curious and observant. The more you engage with different cultures, the more you'll develop your own insights and understanding.
So we need to become cultural explorers, constantly seeking out new perspectives and challenging our assumptions. But where do we even begin?
One way to start is to identify a specific culture that interests you and dive deep. Read books and articles about that culture. Watch documentaries. Listen to music. Explore online forums and communities.
So choose a cultural adventure and immerse myself in it.
Precisely. And don't just focus on the facts and figures. Try to understand the values, the beliefs, the stories, the lived experiences of the people from that culture.
That makes sense. But what about actually practicing our conversational skills? Any tips for that?
One of the best ways to practice is to connect with native English speakers from different cultural backgrounds.
Okay.
There are countless ways to do this, from joining language exchange groups, to volunteering in multicultural communities, to simply striking up conversations with people you meet in your daily life.
I love that. It's like turning everyday interactions into opportunities for cultural exchange.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions. People usually appreciate it when you show a genuine interest in their culture.
So embrace curiosity as our guide. And be open to learning from everyone we meet.
Exactly. And remember, every conversation is a chance to expand your understanding of the world.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. But I have to be honest, I still have some lingering anxieties about making mistakes and potentially offending someone.
That's completely normal. But remember, most people are forgiving, especially when they see that you're making a genuine effort to learn and understand. And the more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
So it's about taking those small steps outside our comfort zone, one conversation at a time.
You got it. And over time, those small steps will add up to a journey of cultural discovery and personal growth.
This is eye-opening.
Hmm.
I'm starting to see how mastering English conversations is not just about language proficiency, but also about developing cultural intelligence.
And that cultural intelligence can open doors to new friendships, new opportunities, and a whole new way of seeing the world.
I'm excited to keep exploring this. Before we wrap up part 2, can you give us a sneak peek at what's coming up in the final part of our deep dive?
We'll be looking at even more advanced strategies for navigating cultural nuances, and we'll hear some inspiring stories from people who have successfully mastered the art of cross-cultural communication.
Sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear more. Welcome back to our deep dive into English conversations. We've been talking about how cultural context is so important and how mastering those nuances is like learning a whole new language.
Yeah, it's like we've been peeling back the layers of an onion, revealing all these hidden depths of communication.
We've explored so much, from understanding humor and politeness across cultures to those nonverbal cues, and even some powerful frameworks for understanding the values and beliefs that shape communication styles.
It's been a lot, but I think there's still so much more we can uncover.
I agree. In this final part, I'd love to hear some more advanced techniques for mastering those nuances. What are some strategies that can really take things to the next level?
One technique that I find really helpful is cultural empathy. It's about going beyond simply understanding the differences between cultures and really stepping into the shoes of someone from another culture.
So it's not just knowing the facts, it's about feeling their emotions and perspectives.
Exactly. It's about trying to see the world through their eyes, to understand their values and beliefs and to appreciate the challenges and opportunities they face.
That sounds so powerful. But how do we actually practice cultural empathy?
One way is to do perspective-taking exercises. So you can imagine yourself in a specific situation from the perspective of someone from another culture. For example, imagine you're attending a business meeting in a culture where hierarchy is really important. How would you approach the meeting differently? How would you interact with your colleagues? What would your nonverbal cues be?
So it's like a mental simulation that helps us anticipate those cultural differences.
Exactly. Another powerful technique is to seek out stories and narratives from people from different cultures.
Oh, like reading novels and watching films.
Yeah, exactly. Or listening to podcasts or having conversations with people from different backgrounds.
I love that stories have a way of transporting us to other worlds.
They do.
It's like we're experiencing their culture firsthand.
And by exposing ourselves to a diversity of stories, we can really broaden our understanding of the human experience.
This is inspiring. But I have to admit, sometimes I get overwhelmed by just how many cultures and languages there are out there.
I understand. But remember, you don't have to be an expert on every culture in the world. Just focus on the cultures that are most relevant to you.
So if I'm working with colleagues from Japan, I might focus on understanding Japanese culture. If I'm planning a trip to Brazil, I might delve into Brazilian culture.
Exactly. It's about prioritizing.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's say I've done my research and I've practiced my cultural empathy. Are there any other tips for making sure those conversations go smoothly?
One of the most important things is to be really mindful of your communication style. So pay attention to your tone of voice, your body language, your choice of words.
So even if my intentions are good, I could still come across the wrong way.
Exactly. For example, in some cultures, it's considered rude to interrupt somebody, while in other cultures, it's seen as a sign of engagement.
Oh, wow.
Being aware of those differences can really help you avoid misunderstandings.
Okay, so cultural awareness plus mindful communication equals success.
Exactly. And remember, even with the best preparation, there will be times when you make mistakes.
Yeah, that's inevitable.
It is. The key is to not let those mistakes discourage you.
So embrace those awkward moments as learning experiences.
Exactly. And most importantly, don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're not sure about something, just ask. And most people are happy to share their insights.
It's like having a cultural guide.
Exactly. And the more you engage with different cultures, the more you'll develop your own intuition and fluency. It's a journey.
This has been an incredible journey. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on what it means to really master English conversations.
You too.
It's not just about speaking the language, it's about understanding the people.
And that understanding can lead to deeper connections, richer experiences, and a more harmonious world.
Beautifully said.
Mm-hmm.
And to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, keep connecting with the world around you. That journey of cultural understanding is an adventure worth taking.
Every conversation is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to build those bridges of understanding.
And on that note, we'll sign off. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Until next time, happy conversing.